Hello everybody and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as J-Monster, and you're watching a brand new series that we're going to be doing. We're going to be playing Caesar in Gaul. We're going to be playing the campaign as the Romans, as you can see here. And a few quick notes before we get started. As you may notice, my voice is not what it used to be. I'm a little sick right now. I'm fighting quite a bad cold. Finally, it's happened. Finally, I've gotten well and truly sick instead of just sniffles. And additionally, I'd also like to apologize for the delay in getting things up. There's just been some stuff that's happened in the last few days, so I've been kind of dealing with that. But yeah, I don't like to delay. You know, come hell or high water, I do like to upload and get you guys the content that you guys like. So yeah, that's really all. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start talking a little bit about Caesar and Caesar as the man, and then we'll move on to some other things. This is going to be kind of a informative, I guess, historical campaign, because I know you guys like that. You guys really like the historical battle series, so why not do this as well, yeah? So Caesar is, yeah, we'll talk about him first because he's fairly prominent in this campaign, given that he ran the whole thing, and just an important historical figure in general. So Caesar was a patrician from a patrician family, which is basically the old money of Rome. And they are said to have first come to Rome from Alba Longa, which is an area at the time known as Latium, which I believe is like kind of south-central Italy, if I'm not mistaken. And they came to the city of Rome when this city was destroyed by a Roman king, Tullus Hostilius. So this is pre-Republic. The family also claims descent through Iulus, otherwise known as Ascanius, who is a son of Aeneas the Trojan. And before we go any farther than that, we're going to talk a little bit about Caesar's name. His full name is Gaius Julius Caesar, if we're going to be pronouncing it in proper Ciceronian Latin. Yes, Cicero's name in Latin is Cicero, which just doesn't sound as nice, does it? But his first name, Gaius, is his, I believe it's called his praenomen, which is like his given name. And then there is his clan name, or gens, which is called his nomen, which is Julius, because Romans don't have the j, or Romans. In Latin there is no j, there is only y. So there, Gaius Julius Caesar, which is his, Caesar is his cognomen, which is like sort of the branch which within the family of the Julii that he belongs to. So yeah, they also claim their descent through descendant of Aeneas, who is a figure in Virgil's kind of fictional account of the founding of Rome called the Aeneid. And there's other stuff that goes on in Rome as well. But yes, they are Trojan survivors, apparently. But also they were descended through Aeneas from the god Venus. So a lot of Roman patrician families would have, like, they would claim descent from, like mythical figures or gods and that sort of thing. I imagine it just added an air of legitimacy because they are patricians and they do have more privileges than the other plebeian castes, which are like the lower castes. There's three castes, I believe, in Rome in the late Republic period. There's the equestrian class. There's, well, in order of prominence, I guess we could say that there is the patricians, the equestrians, and then the plebeians. It's just kind of a way of, I would imagine, legitimizing themselves. So it looks like we're going to be moving our ladders forward here, getting this fun siege underway. So we're going to pay a little bit of attention to this, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about Caesar, and we'll talk about the enemies that we're facing. So as you can see here, we're moving up our legions, our cohorts are moving up just outside of the range of their skirmishers on the walls, and then we're going to storm those breaches and surround our foes and destroy them. It seems that I really would have thought that our siege engines would have more ammunition than what they have. It didn't take very long for them to run out. We only managed to blow a couple breaches in the walls despite having 2 siege weapons, which is a little disappointing, to be perfectly frank. And it looks like our troops on the walls are just coming into range of their skirmishers, who are very deadly. You see, there's just like a friggin' firestorm, but I think most of them are being blocked by, mercifully, are being blocked by our ladders as they come in, so our units aren't being completely devastated. Yeah, it looks like we're moving into the city here, and we're fighting the Helvetii. And the Helvetii are... Now, there are three, according to Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic War, there are three areas that people inhabit in Gaul. And these are inhabited by the Belgae, who are the tribes closest to the Rhine and are in pretty constant conflict with the Germans across the Rhine. The Aquitani, who he doesn't really say much about in this part here. And there's also a people who calls themselves the Celts. Now, inside the narrative of the commentaries in the Gallic War, Caesar uses Celts and Gauls pretty much interchangeably. So now they are Celtic peoples. I don't really know how accurate this is. It seems a little bit like a gross oversimplification of, you know, kind of the demographic of Gaul at the time. But, you know, what do I know? Who am I to argue with Caesar? It looks like one of their spearmen units here have managed to slip behind our lines and are going to attack our horsemen, which unfortunately I don't notice until it's too late. And for some reason I decide to attack them. Well done, well done. So our horsemen are going to pay the price for my stupidity there. But now the Belgae are, according to Caesar, the bravest of the confederation of tribes known as the Belgae, probably because they are in constant conflict with the Germans across the Rhine. And the Helvetii are, in turn, the bravest of the Celtic tribes inhabiting Gaul. Now, I'm not entirely sure how you objectively measure the bravery of somebody, but I will say this. Caesar, at one point, comes into conflict with both of these tribes who he is describing in such favorable terms, in terms of their bravery. Now, maybe they were, in fact, extremely brave, or maybe Caesar wanted to make his defeats of them all the more... Perhaps they were just as brave as everybody else, you know what I mean? But if they're the bravest tribes in Gaul, it makes his defeat of them much more impressive. It gets him a lot more praise. And Caesar, like any Roman politician, was very much concerned with his gravitas, which is like his honor within the state. But anyway, just something to think about when reading history is that it is actually written by people. As strange and remote as it can sometimes seem, it is written by people, and sometimes they do want you to look at things a certain way, so you gotta look at the motivations, which is what I will try to do throughout this series. In any case, the Helvetii were compelled by a number of factors. One, there was a man amongst them who was the foremost in rank and wealth, and his name was Orgetorix. And I imagine these are romanizations of the name, since this is like the only surviving text that we have of the events of the Gallic Wars, so we're just going to have to assume that... I think it's safe to assume that most of the stuff in here is, like, Romanized. Most of the names and such, so his name might have been something else other than Orgetorix. In any case, he wanted to convince his countrymen to migrate en masse, a large mass migration, and the Helvetii were quite numerous, and despite their constant conflict with the Germans, were enjoying a fair amount of prosperity and stuff like that. But they were not happy with their territorial boundaries. So Orgetorix convinced them, you know, that you were the best fighters in all of Gaul, and we could easily take the whole country. So yeah, if somebody tells you that a massive task like this is, oh yeah, it's easy, it's no problem, we can do it, and then flatters you, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him at all, because he is blowing smoke up your ass. In any case, these two considerations made the Helvetii people much disposed to hearken to Orgetorix. And yeah, we made an alliance with the Aedui here, who were a prominent tribe in Gaul, who were traditionally allies of Rome. I guess you could call them puppets if you really wanted to. So acting on these feelings, they began buying up all of the cattle and like wagons that they could, and sowing as much land as they could, so that they could have the food they would need for this massive migration of theirs. And they thought about 2 years would suffice for completing these preparations. And I think we end up destroying the Helvetii quite soon here. Yeah, I think that ends up being the end of them. Unfortunately, not much of a migration. And strangely enough, they have a town here because after they purchase all these things and kind of make peace with their neighbors so that they're not interrupted in their preparations by the untimely outbreak of a war with one of the neighboring tribes, they begin their migration and they cross into an area that's quite close to the Roman province. So, and they convince a number of their allies as well, like I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce this, but the Uraraki, the Tulingi, and the Latawiki, to follow their example. And they all burn their towns and villages and migrate en masse. As well, they were joined also by the Boii, who were a tribe that previously inhabited on the other side of the Rhine. Now, there's only two routes that the Helvetii could take to leave their country. One led between the Jura Mountains and the Rhone, which is a river, through the land of the Sequani, and was narrow and difficult, and the wagons could scarcely pass along it in single file. And as being a narrow pass, there's the Tulingi right here, buddies with the Helvetii, who are probably not happy at us for destroying their allies. This pass was so narrow that it could be blocked by a handful of men, so you're not going to get through there unless the Sequani want you to get through there. And the other route leads through the Roman province, which is a lot easier and more convenient. Because the Rome, which forms the frontier between the Helvetii and the Allobroges, who are probably a little farther to the southwest, nearest to where like modern-day Switzerland is, and connected with it by a bridge, is the city of what be now Geneva. The Helvetii thought that they could convince the Allobroges to let them through or fight their way through, because they thought that they would be disposed to let them through because this area was recently pacified by the Romans and I believe added to the province. But they didn't want this to happen, unfortunately, and Caesar didn't want this to happen either, because the Helvetii were not exactly on good terms with Rome. So they passed through, letting them pass through and get to where the Helvetii would want to settle is an area that's quite close to the breadbasket of the Roman province, and there's no natural defenses. So it looks like we're adopting Mark Antony. Ooh, that's fun. And I think we end up using him as a general. Yeah, I kick the poor guy out of his army in Narwhal Martius and replace him with Mark Antony. Now, Caesar enters into negotiations with this tribe, and they promised, to do no harm, and they just wanted to pass through, the Roman province. And Caesar remembered that these same Helvetii were the ones that had destroyed an army under the consul Lucius Cassius, and put their army, to rout, and it says here sent them under the yoke, which I can only assume means that they were enslaved. And because of this, he was not disposed to grant their request. If people so hostile to Rome were permitted to go through the province, he thought, he didn't think that they would be likely to refrain from damaging persons and property. And he was probably right. I mean, it's hard to keep over, probably maybe 200,000 people in line and get them all to do the same thing at once. It's impossible. I can barely get 5 people in my study groups at school to coordinate properly. I can't imagine 200,000. But in the meantime, he had a single legion with him, and this is around the 13th of April, and he used them to create a large fortification on the bank of the Rhone to prevent the Helvetii from crossing by using force, if that's what they intended to do. And these fortifications consisted of a rampart about 16 feet high with a trench running parallel to the rampart and what I assume is the river. And then he puts redoubts and stuff. It was quite a powerful fortification. And Caesar's troops are there's quite a lot of mention of their abilities as siege engineers. So as you saw earlier, I gave them the siege engineers trait because I wanted to represent this. And this is Caesar's army, and Roman legions in general were kind of an army of army engineers, basically. The stuff that they could create were, in a short amount of time too, were quite amazing. So the Helvetii intended to cross after being rejected by Caesar, and were driven back by the Romans on their fortifications. So there only remained the one route to them through the land of the Sequani. Now, there was a sympathetic faction amongst the Aedui, led by I believe his name was Dumnorix, who was the brother of Diaeacus, who was, previously to Dumnorix, was a very prominent member of the Aedui. And Dumnorix, also having grand aspirations on obtaining more power, possibly even becoming king, convinced the Sequani, who liked him. He was very popular, he was very generous, and he convinced them to let the Helvetii pass through their lands. And this is the point where Caesar enters into he leaves the province, because, as I said earlier, he wants to stop them from threatening. Well, this is what he says he wants to do. He wants to stop them from threatening Rome's cornfields and that sort of thing. So yeah, that is the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm doing this as post-commentary, and feel free to give me your opinion on that. I happen to like it just because I find if I have to split my attention between both gameplay and giving you historical information, I find that it becomes a little kind of scattered, not quite as focused, and I don't like that very much. So this is, I think, a good format for this particular kind of campaign. But if you guys don't think so, feel free to tell me, and I will definitely take all of that into consideration when doing the next episode. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in episode 2. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!